Welcome to the X Factor Real Estate Podcast, where we are simplifying the world of real estate one podcast at a time. I'm your host, Teri Hudson. Let's get into it. Welcome to the X Factor Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Teri Hudson, principal broker, and I'm here today with Matt and Marcus. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
You guys want to introduce yourselves for a minute?
Yeah, so my name is Marcus Jessop. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Salt Lake Board of Realtors, and I've been with them for almost 9 years now. So, yeah, and I do all their government affairs work locally just in Salt Lake County and some municipalities across Utah.
So what's that mean for like government affairs work for the Board of Realtors?
So government affairs, my principal duties are fundraising for RPAC, for our Realtor Political Action Committee. A lot of people, if you're a realtor and you're actually are listening to this, you probably seen my emails or have been bugged about me, about donating to RPAC. But then we have committees that, once a realtor invests in RPAC, we have committees that will make decisions on where that money actually gets allocated. And so we are one of the largest, I'd say probably one of the largest donors at the municipal level for housing. And it's because zoning is principally governed by the municipalities. And so they decide every building you see out there was decided by some sort of city council action. And so our job is to not only raise money for, my job is to only raise money for RPAC and reach our goal, but at the same time use those funds to get people elected to office that are friendly to real estate and friendly to building more housing.
Awesome.
In the state of Utah, yep.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Matt.
Cool. And I'm Matt Clewett. I am the Vice President of Public Policy and Advocacy at the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. I've also been at the board for quite a bit of time now, 7 years so far. And my job is basically to understand the public policy happenings within Salt Lake County that affect our industry as realtors, property rights, etc. Research different policy trends that need to be advocated for, advocate those policies to city council members, the county council, even up with the state legislature sometimes too. And
so you're constantly with those people that are making those decisions.
Constantly. And I think a lot of my job revolves around having the best information possible and being able to convey that information to those elected officials in a manner that's relatively easy to understand and articulate and explain why it's so important that we really advocate for some of these policies that really do impact the consumer here in Utah.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, just like this podcast, it's all information, right? And the people that are making the laws or grants or any of those policies, they don't know what they don't know, right? And so I think it is super important to have people who are in the industry day in and day out who are bringing them that information, because anybody can Google information, but unless you hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right, you need to know exactly what is going on and how those ripple effects affect the consumer directly.
Totally. And speaking on that and kind of going with that conversation, a lot of our city council members, county commission, mayors, etc., they come from a wide variety of different industries. Some of them are practicing medical doctors. Some of them are business individuals. Some of them are realtors. And we really encourage you, if you are a realtor, run for office. Marcus and I will be happy to help you out with that.
That's right.
But a lot of them don't come from within our industry. And it's hard to expect a public official to understand every detail of every industry perfectly.
Oh, for sure.
And that's where people like Marcus and myself come in. We're happy to work with those individuals, educate them on the issues that are pervasive within their communities, and provide some suggestions on policy resources that they can use to make their community a little bit better of a place.
Yeah. Do you feel like they are responsive to you guys when you are in front of them and giving them that information most of the time?
Yeah. So Marcus, especially, I want to toot his horn a little bit. He has developed an amazing culture within Salt Lake County, and previously
Marcus
before,
is pretty great.
previously before him, Justin Allen and a few other individuals within our associations have really worked collaboratively to foster some great relationships with city council members, mayors, etc. And when it comes to housing data, housing issues, private property rights, etc., we're usually the first call. And having that ability and having that trust of those elected officials is so important.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and what's the phrase? It's like, if you are only going to someone when there is a problem, you can't solve the problem, right? You need to
Right.
you need to start solving the problem before there's a problem, right? By building that relationship so that way they don't think you're some random person that is just banging on their door complaining about what is going on, right? Or vice versa.
And also, I think the common phrase is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a
Love
very
that.
good job over the past many decades here at the association to make sure we are at the table during those conversations.
Yeah.
And it's important to know too, like a lot of our residents don't understand that our legislature, most people in the city council, they're all part-time, so they don't have a lot of time to allocate. They don't have a lot of resources or time to spend on a lot of these real estate issues.
Right.
And so they rely on people like Matt and I and people from UAR and other associations that in the real estate industry to give them context of why this is important, that we build more housing, affordable housing, and stuff like that. Because oftentimes you'll find a city council person that literally all they can do is go to the city council meeting.
Yeah.
2 hours a week or whatever. They may have like a work session or something, maybe 3 hours a week if they're lucky. In some cities, people, that's all they do. And so when you only spend 3 hours a week on something and you have probably, I would say, Matt, you tell me if I'm wrong, 70% or maybe 80% of the issues that city council people deal with has to do with housing, zoning,
no doubt.
and all this other stuff. So they spend in that 3 hour period, they spend quite a bit of time, but it's also the most controversial part because depending on the development, you can get all these residents come out for or against something. And so we give them a lot of grace because they don't spend a lot of time, and that's why having our expertise is important to go to them and convey to them why it's important to have a certain amount of a project or a supply or something going on in the city.
Yeah, bringing the actual data to them, right? So this episode I want to focus on affordable housing, really unaffordable housing, right? And so like I named this episode the Unaffordable Housing Dilemma because we talk about affordable housing and what the heck does that mean, right? Like affordable, that word is so baffling to so many people because they think, well, it's not affordable, right?
Yeah, Matt will tell you there's nothing affordable of what's going on. He puts out a policy report every quarter, and it's just you look at it and it's just like, oh my gosh, in order to afford a house, if you look at the median income, it's very unaffordable, even in our state.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll jump into that real quick. And Teri, I'll provide you the link that you can publish along with this
I would love
podcast.
that, yeah.
Either in the description of this podcast below, you can click on it. It'll take you to the most recent quarterly report for the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. Every quarter, we put together a municipal affordability housing report that we send out to every city council member, mayor, county council member, county mayor within Salt Lake County. And the report goes into detail on the most recent quarter's housing statistics, how much single-family housing costs, how much multifamily housing costs, and most importantly, and I think something that hasn't been talked about much, is the actual dollar amount that you would actually need to make, as well as the monthly payment for those types of housing.
Right.
Too. Because what we keep hearing over and over again is the price of a house.
Right.
And without additional context with interest rates and with everything going on, it's hard for an elected official to conceptualize that.
For sure.
And so we try to bring it down to the granular level, to the ground floor level, to help our elected officials really understand what the younger generations, what middle income folks are dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's really tough.
So we just did an episode on first time home buyers, and I had lenders in the room with me, and we talked about DTI, right? Debt to income ratio. Okay, so they want you to be 43, sometimes 45, as high as 45% of your gross income for the month. And that includes any credit cards, any student loans, any car payment, and your mortgage payment, including principal, interest, tax, insurance, right?
Yeah.
So that number, to think about that number going higher and higher and higher, and you can't get approved for a home loan unless that DTI is 43%, or smaller, right? So actually I did to put some numbers, and then I want you guys are really the brains behind all of this, but every day the interest rates are changing, right? Mm-hmm. Every day. And so
Seems like they keep going up.
Yes. And I screenshotted this morning I screenshotted the current interest rate. So today, actually, of course, my phone's not going to participate.
And we're filming at the very end of May,
yes.
right now, just for context.
Yes.
It changes by the time.
That's right. It changes by the day. So today is the 30th of May.
Yeah.
Right. And so this won't air for a couple of weeks. So by the time this airs, it may change, right? It will change, right? Every day it changes. So the interest rate today for a 30-year fixed is 6.89. It's the highest since February. So it's gone up this week.
Yep.
And every day it fluctuates, and you drive down I-15 and you see billboards and you're like, what's the interest rate today? And that's not even necessarily the actual interest rate, right? That's, a bought down interest rate or whatever from a particular, someone who's advertising for it. But every day you can tell if they're going up or down. So today it happens to be 6.89 for a 30-year mortgage. Okay, so I bumped that up even just for the sake of math. On a mortgage calculator, I bumped it to 7% because it's 6.89. If that's the interest rate, you're talking stellar credit, all of the reserves, all of these things to get the quote unquote best rate, right? And so I'm not a mortgage lender, right? I'm just doing this on a mortgage calculator for the sake of numbers. But today, if you were to have a house that was $450,000 in purchase price, and you only put down 5% a down payment for, let's say, as a first-time home buyer, you only put 5% down. Okay,
which is above the FHA rate.
it is above. It is above, but it's not 20%, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
you're
not 20%.
You're paying mortgage insurance most likely. There are first-time home buyer loans where you don't have to pay a mortgage insurance premium, right? There's no mortgage insurance on it, depending on who you get your loan through. And there's different things as a first-time home buyer, you can get those incentives. But again, for sake of numbers, on a $450,000 house at a 7% interest rate and 5% down, you are talking about almost $3,200 a month for a payment.
Wow.
$3,200 a month. Okay, now I did the same number, down payment, and purchase price of the home, but at a COVID interest rate. Okay, so we did 3%.
Yeah.
Right, and that was $2,146 for the same price house.
Isn't that crazy?
So much more expensive now because of the interest rate, right?
Totally.
And I did one more number. If you were to use that 3% interest rate from what people got in when they were COVID and slightly post-COVID, in order to get to that almost $3,200 a month mortgage payment that you would pay at today's interest rate or at $450,000 house, at 3% interest, you could have bought a $675,000 house. $675,000 house versus $450,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the reason why I want to bring that up is because people do talk about the purchase price of the house and housing prices being high. But really, the issue is interest rates plus the high price of the house. Right. When you were during the COVID time and it was low interest rates, people didn't actually care what they were paying for the sales purchase price. That's why you had multiple offers that were saying, I'll pay $25, $50, $100 sometimes $1,000 over the asking price because they had such a low interest rate that they knew their payment they could still afford, right?
Yeah.
Now their interest rate is higher. They can't afford to go above the list price, and yet we're not seeing a huge dive in list price, right? And purchase price.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think a lot of it has to do with some basics, economics 101. Now, I'm not an economist. I only play one on podcasts.
Right.
But what I've
Economist, mortgage lender, realtor.
what I do know though is that when you have a undersupply of a product that's in demand, the price of that product is going to go up.
Right.
Here in Utah, according to the latest Kim C. Gardner data, we're approximately 37,000 housing units short.
37,000
housing units short for families throughout the state.
Right.
And so that data is really concerning to us because when you have a population growth, a family population growth within Utah that has grown upwards of 20% in the last little bit. And if you look from, I think it's 2024 to 2035, We anticipate the population growing another 20-something%.
And where are they going to live?
And where are they going to live?
Right.
And if you look at the new construction housing starts over the past, I think it's 4 or 5 years, they jumped up a lot during COVID times, but then they went right back down because of interest rates. And we're not building enough to satisfy that housing gap that we face. And so long as we don't meet that equilibrium of supply and demand, we're going to be continuing to face some serious financial hurdles for individuals who are looking to purchase homes.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of touch on some numbers here from the most recent report. So this was Q1 of 2025. This was January, February, and March. We used the median interest rate over that time, which was 6.82%. We took into account the median purchase price for single-family homes, which was, I think,
single family for everybody who
in Salt Lake County,
meaning detached, right? A
Detached
detached house is
Correct.
a single family home.
Correct. That number, the median purchase price for a single family home in Salt Lake County during the first quarter of 2025 was $596,940. So we're nearly $600,000 for a single family home. For multifamily, that was $435,000. Now, what we like to do, as I mentioned before with these reports, is put that into numbers that are elected officials and the palpable figures. How much would you need to earn in order to afford that house? If you had to guess, what do you think you would need to make in order to afford that?
Gosh, I mean,
let's do the $600,000 house, for example. Well, in today's market with that 6.82% interest rate, now we took some liberties to make some assumptions, as you always have to do with any type of economic data. We chose to incorporate a 10% down payment rate. We chose to incorporate the median tax rate for Salt Lake County. We also incorporated a utility cost in there because HUD defines attainable housing or affordable housing as 30% of your gross yearly income of what
for
for housing expenses.
That 43%, 45% we were talking about includes all debt.
But for housing, HUD defines it as 30% of your gross income. So that includes your mortgage rate itself, any PMI you might be paying, any HOA memberships that you're a part of, utility rates, taxes, etc. All that's bundled into that 30% debt to income ratio. And so if you were to guess what that $600,000, how much you'd have to make in order to afford.
He's going to test my math.
I'm going to
right
test
here on air.
Throw out a number because it's really concerning to see what the actual number is.
$10,000 a year, man?
Yeah. I think $10,000 is right around that, Marcus.
Well, a month or a year?
A year.
Yeah.
Your yearly income.
I mean, honestly, I think you would need to be 6 figures plus.
Yeah.
Right?
Not only that, but pretty high. $171,000 a year is the income that you would need to make to assume our assumptions to afford that $596,000 home.
$171,000.
And just for reference, the median family income in Salt Lake County is, I believe, $97,000.
I don't want to tell you how old I was before I was making $171,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right? I can't imagine being a first-time home buyer. I mean, I bought my first house. Now, this is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But I bought my first house when I was 21. And I went through the whole downturn of the financial crisis, right? I was not in a situation that was ideal, right? Buying my first home. And then, I went through the backside of it and financial loss. But I cannot imagine what it would have been like having to make $171,000 to buy my first home.
Yeah. And to be fair, the first home market is shifting a lot from single family detached housing to more entry level type housing, which used to be a small starter home, which is now transitioned into
a townhome or a condo. And honestly, there's a lot of reason for that. It's not just because of affordability. A lot of it is affordability.
Yeah.
But the up and coming new homeowner generation, they actually want no maintenance. They want freedom to be able to spend their weekends doing other things, not doing yard work, not having to worry about maintaining the exterior of a home. So there are benefits to a townhome and a condo for sure,
Yeah,
right? They love
absolutely.
the amenities, but along with those things come extra fees, right? We'll take care of all of the grounds. You have a pool, you have a clubhouse, you have a pickleball court. You also have a $300, $500, $800 HOA fee, depending on where you live, right? And so that is on top of that mortgage, right? And so now you have a high mortgage and a big HOA fee that has to be within that 30% in order to be affordable.
And the income you would need to make in order to afford that, $435,000 townhome, condominium, etc., attached housing types would be $129,951
annually.
But something that I really like to emphasize in these reports, we don't include HOA fees into that figure.
Oh, you don't?
We don't, because we don't know what the HOA fees are going to be.
Every HOA
and so we don't include a couple of things into these reports. And so we also include the 10% down payment. If you're making a 5% down payment, a 3.5% down payment, your number's going to be higher.
Yeah.
If you're making if you join an HOA that costs $500 a month, your income's going to need to be higher.
Yeah.
So what we really put out here is pretty much the best case scenario for a lot of people.
Bottom.
This is pretty much the lowest that you need to,
and you can't even
comfortably afford.
You can't even find a development now that's not in an HOA.
Oh,
every
right.
city puts every new development in
Right.
an HOA. So if you have starter homes you're building, like the governor wants 35,000 starter homes throughout the state of Utah, and they put $300 million towards that particular project. All those are most likely are going to be in some sort of HOA.
Right.
And so it's like that. Like Matt said, that's the very bottom. I mean, and it's funny because if the current trends continue, by 2030, we're going to be 153,000 units short by 2030 if the trends continue.
So let's talk about that for just a second.
Yeah, let's go into it.
It's wild when we share these statistics of how far behind we are in the supply of homes. Everyone thinks, why, right? Because there's so much land in Utah, but where is the land in Utah, right? And so here's what I tell people. Utah, now, I'm not a native to Utah. I'm a transplant. Everyone's going to be like, wait, where is she a transplant from? No.
Uh-oh, Teri, where are you from here?
Let me guess.
Yeah, so originally, actually, I am from California. So, yeah. So I grew up in California. I actually swore I would never live in Utah because I was California girl through and through. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, and this isn't a political podcast by any means, but there's various reasons why people move out of other states, right? Ironically, affordability, right? Mm-hmm. Utah was a more affordable option for me than California was, right? I was in the Bay Area, super expensive homes. And so even, versus me coming from somewhere like Nebraska that has cheaper housing than Utah, right? That would be a more expensive move. For me, it was a more affordable move for me to go from California to Utah. And then my family was all here, and there were a lot of reasons why I moved here. That being said, people who are born and raised here typically don't leave. It's one of those places where they want to stay by their family. They're not retiring from working in Utah and moving out of the state. People stay here. Most of the people stay here until they pass away, and their family is all here. So people want to stay here because their family is here. They were raised here. They work here. They retire here. And that is just the people who are born and raised here. They're not leaving. Then you have the people like me from other states that, for one reason or another, whether it's family, finances, job, whatever it happens to be, recreation, like Utah has amazing things to offer on so many different levels. People move here, and you also have people who are now able to work remotely with their jobs, right? And so you can pick anywhere to go, and you're an adventurous spirit, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go where there's red rocks and snow and desert and lakes and all the things, whatever it happens to be that brought you here. So people are coming here, but people also aren't leaving here. And so...
Well, that has been the trend.
Yeah.
The trouble that we're facing, and especially if this crisis continues to percolate,
Is that they will.
is that they will.
Yeah.
We will be outsourcing our most valuable asset, which is our young generation, because they don't have the same necessarily opportunity that their parents did, that their grandparents did, to get into a house that for many decades was at a quote unquote affordable level. Typically, if you look throughout our history, one of the data points that the economists look towards and that we look towards as policy experts is price to income ratios to determine how affordable a certain asset is. In this case, housing, Salt Lake County, Utah County, the Wasatch Front was roughly at a 3 price to income ratio, which basically means that if the median income was $50,000 back in the day, the median price for a home was $150,000. Today, we're at 6.4 for single family houses in Salt Lake County, and I think we're at 4.3 for multifamily houses.
So your annual income times
6. The median annual income of Salt Lake County, $96,000, times that by 6.
Yeah.
That gets to that $596,000 figure. And
it's expensive.
The reason why Utah is so popular, the reason why we have Silicon Slopes was because the tech companies in California were looking for places that their workforce could live more affordably, that they can develop their products more affordably, and have a well-educated workforce who can join into those companies. Utah fit all those criteria
for sure
for a while.
Such a great place.
However, that affordability aspect is starting to become more and more unattainable.
Yeah.
And so I've heard quite a few stories actually of individuals around my age range. I'm 30 years old, by the way. But
Gosh,
my
babies. How old are you, Marcus?
Too old.
Oh,
This podcast. I'm where you're at. I think we were the same age.
okay.
But there's individuals in my generation who I've talked to before who have had to move out of state simply because they can't afford housing in Utah or finding a place that they can get married, have kids, and feel comfortable in their neighborhoods at an affordable price point.
Yeah.
Whereas places in the South, in the Midwest, may offer that opportunity on a housing basis. So,
or if you're single and not married and you're living by yourself,
absolutely,
it's like now you're a one income house, right? And you've got to have $129,000 annual income in order to be able to get into a $435,000 townhome. Or were those your numbers?
And there's a real reason why people want to buy houses. If you look at the average income of the average homeowner versus the average renter, the homeowner has a net worth of approximately, I think it's $390-something thousand, $400,000, whereas the median renter has a net worth of roughly around $10,000.
Yeah, wow.
So there's a huge value to becoming a homeowner in the long term, and it makes so much sense to buy a home, and that's the key wealth building tactic of the middle class is home ownership.
Yeah, and
when you start to price out an entire generation from being able to achieve that American dream, it's going to have some serious downwind consequences for the state.
For sure. I mean, I get so many parents who say to me, Teri, are my kids ever going to be able to afford to buy a home here? Yeah. It's wild. It's a huge concern, right? They're living in the parents' basement or they're renting an apartment. They have no end in sight as far as, renting goes. Rent's not going down, right? And so that's the other issue is that rent continues to go up, just like buying a house continues to go up. So if you're going to be charged up the wazoo every month, you might as well put that in your own pocket in equity and own a home, right? Yeah. So how can we make it happen for them? So let's go back to the shortage conversation. I know that's what we've been on, but let's talk about how we're solving that, right? So we know the governor wants to have 35,000 new units, right?
Yeah, so they passed 2024, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but they passed HB 572 that basically allocates $300 million from the Transportation Investment Fund for low-interest loans to developers. And
low-interest loans to developers to build.
Now, the problem is to build a certain threshold of housing, and they're starter homes. Like, I think most of them are targeting around $350,000, $450,000. There's $300 million in the fund. I'll tell you right now, Deseret News did an article just like a week ago or something like that on Jed Nilsson Homes. He's actually a realtor. He was the president of the UAR.
Yeah, no, I've met him. Great guy.
Yeah, the guy with the long beard and stuff like that. So he's the only one I think so far that's actually taken advantage of this loan, this money that the state is actually given to developers if they build.
So it's already accessible.
It's already So it's like, but the problem is like so Jed's used about $10.7 million to build, I think, roughly 275 homes in Plain City. And herein lies the issue. Like Plain City is so far out there. It's like, it's would that be considered Wasatch Front, Matt? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's still Wasatch Front, but it's north. It's in Weber County.
You're not in the heart.
Yeah,
of
so
Salt Lake County,
if you're working in Salt Lake, that's the problem we face is we're landlocked as a state. I mean, the Wasatch Front mostly is surrounded by mountains to the east, or mountains to the west, in some instances lakes to the west, like where I live in Vineyard in Utah County, which is last year in 2024 was the fastest growing city in the state of Utah. It's literally landlocked between I-15 on the east and I-15 on the east, and then it starts Orem on the east of I-15, and then the west is you have Utah Lake, right? And so this is the problem we're dealing with is like if you have a landlocked area like we're in right now, and you want to build homes at an affordable price like $350,000, $450,000, there's no way you're building it anywhere near here.
Yeah.
Anywhere in Salt Lake County, Utah County. It's
you're
just,
going to
unless
the
you're going, you have to go far out. And that's where housing is going to be going more and more. You'll see to even get these affordable housing units. And part of the reason I think maybe some of the developers haven't taken advantage of this is because the land is so expensive in the state of Utah. You have to go all the way to Plain City. You have to go past into Jewett County and other places in Utah County to even find a place.
What's the price of an acre of raw land in Draper? $1.3 million, I think.
I think Matt has,
Well, I don't have that stuff.
Okay.
But I trust you on that one, Terry.
I think it's $1.3 million for raw land, an acre of raw land in Draper.
It's really expensive and it's really tough. And I think one of the hurdles that a lot of developers have in addressing the housing unit shortage is, yes, we can build very far away from the job centers. We can build way past pace. We can build very, very far south, very far north, very far west, and work on transportation solutions to get individuals here or to bring jobs to those locations. Some of those ideas have been like the Utah Inland Port, for example. They're trying to prioritize making these subports in different areas throughout the state to provide job centers in those areas and try to bring the jobs to those folks, which is fantastic idea.
Or you have a lot of people who, again, are working remotely.
Correct.
Right?
Or you have people who are working remotely.
That works great for them.
But something that is really tough that we deal with every day with city councils is infill development.
Yep.
Now, this is the type of development that brings the homes to the job centers. So, for example, there might be properties that were originally zoned agriculture. All around them were built single-family homes or townhomes or whatever it might be.
Big old farm not being used.
Yeah, big old farm not being used.
In the middle.
And for whatever reason, that farmer, that owner of that property has decided to keep it that way for a while, and good on them. That's their property rights.
For
That
sure.
they can choose to utilize their property for the highest and best use. And eventually, though, you might have a further on generation member who decides not to be a farmer anymore, who decides to do something else, and they decide to utilize their land for highest and best use to sell it as is their property right. And in many of those cases, someone who buys it is a developer.
Right.
Now, the problem we're facing, though, is when a developer tries to buy those properties and tries to build housing that is desperately needed in our neighborhoods, there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of pushback from neighbors who grew up with that farm maybe in their backyard for the last 30 years. And granted, I understand the struggle there. There's individuals who move to a certain community because they like that farm. They like that piece of land. And the problem, though, lies in they don't own that piece of property. Your property rights end where your property ends. And
which is a hard concept to explain to people.
Totally.
Right.
It is. And granted, I understand. However, when a developer tries to purchase that land and rezone it for in many cases, which would allow for additional units on that property that might be a little bit more dense, but will still look amazing for the community and will provide desperately needed housing to city employees, teachers, firefighters, police officers, young married couples, young individuals who are looking to buy their first piece of property and use it to build some wealth. You have that pushback from neighborhoods, and city councils oftentimes will listen to the constituents who currently live there and disregard the citizens who may live there in the future.
Right.
And so what originally might be a property that will be zoned for a number of townhouses or condos that will provide, let's say, 100 units for a large property, eventually gets talked down into building maybe 20 or something along those lines. And it's all due to what I would call some sort of NIMBY attitudes by residents who live around this area, who then
NIMBY meaning
not in my backyard.
Yeah.
They're fine. Most people are fine with development as long as it's not near them.
That's right.
As long as it's
Build
over
over
that,
there.
build over that community.
Isn't that the case though? Then like, no,
Yeah.
we have an affordable housing issue. We need more housing, but do not build it by me. Right.
Exactly.
That's the mentality. And it's like, do you want your kids living in your basement
Yeah.
because they can't afford a home? Or do you want more homes in your area so that your kids can afford to buy a home?
Yeah.
Because you can't ride both sides of that fence.
Totally.
You need to choose a side. And I think the problem is they want it to be all or none. I want affordable housing, but no more new development. There's too much traffic. There's too many people. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. But we have an affordability problem, right? The control really should be in the city's hands of being able to say, okay, we have the infrastructure for this, or this is how we're adding the infrastructure to support this development. Everything points to us doing this, that it's a positive for our city, right? And why is it that they default to the people who are complaining instead of the need that is there?
Here's something you deal with the cities a lot. Interesting enough, we actually have a lot of entitled units, probably thousands. I don't know if Matt knows the number.
Entitled meaning like they've already planned
Yeah,
it.
they've already planned. The zone's already approved.
They've
They're
already
just not building it now. One of our biggest issues that we're dealing with right now is no city has enough money to bond for infrastructure to build these entitled units. So, like, for example, Salt Lake County has thousands upon thousands of entitled units that could just go up right now if we wanted to.
We're talking tens of thousands.
Yeah, tens of thousands.
And the common argument is, yes, we have tens of thousands of units entitled to be
zoned, approved,
zoned,
ready.
approved. But if a city wants to put infrastructure into one of these zones, they often have they're really cash strapped in a lot of these cities. So they'll have to bond and go through truth and taxation to even do this. The state legislature has done, I think, some great work establishing like public infrastructure districts, financing infrastructure districts, ways for developers to, instead of going to the city for bonding, to bond themselves, and upon a sale, like for some cases, upon a sale of an individual home, that goes off to a portion of that sale goes to pay off the bond, the total bond that's taken out for the infrastructure on that land.
Right.
And so it's very expensive. Like, for example, a good example is in Vineyard, Utah City. You've ever heard of Utah City? I don't know, but it's weird because it's called Utah City, but it's in Vineyard City. Right. It's not actually Utah City. And so Utah City, it sits on land that's almost worth $400 million. In order to get the land ready to remediate, to get the land ready to even build in Vineyard because of the old Geneva steel plant, they had to dig like 10 feet, 15 feet down. I don't know what it was, but it's a considerable amount of money, over $100 million just to remediate the land. And so you got to say, once you do that, and that's not even starting to building. So once you remediate the land and you use $100 million to remediate the land and dig all that tailings out and put new dirt in, you're already starting at
a deficit,
huge,
right? Yeah.
You know the houses are going to be expensive.
Right.
You just know.
Just to pay back the developer.
Yeah, just
right?
to pay.
We're not even talking profit, right? These developers are not sitting in a castle made out of gold, right? They're trying to cover their costs and then have some profit to pay themselves, right, and their workers. But it's so expensive to build.
And so what my point is the state legislature is doing a lot of things to give cities flexibility in terms of this bonding issue so we can get these entitled units developed, built, and stuff like that. And Matt put another emphasis on these infill lots. We're actually dealing with cities right now. Salt Lake City is a good example that is actually looking at ways to lower the overall square footage required to build a single family home within the city, so people can build another detached single family home on their property. So there's additional housing. Like we're talking about one bedroom, 2-bedroom houses. That's it.
Right.
And they're
which a lot of times is what somebody wants, right? They don't have the need to have a 6,000 square foot home. And they're in Utah, let's be real, there's a ton of huge homes.
Yeah.
5,000, 6,000 and higher homes. I mean, that's a big house. Most people do not have a need for that big of a home. But that's kind of like the trend went that way. And then it's like, we are running out of land, people. Like, we need to.
Well, there's only way to do it. The only way to do it is if you're going to do infill, flag lots or something like that.
Yeah.
This is the only way you can actually, or the only other option too, is just to build straight up. And no one likes that either.
Yeah, they don't.
No one likes that option either.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to do it, and cities are. This is why what's great about the Realtors, we have such good relationship with these cities that we can go to these cities and offer these plans. Like say, hey, there is a crisis, show Matt's report, because a lot of cities actually looked at Matt's report. I've had city council people discuss it in their cities.
Yeah.
I've had people reach out to me, and
Matt's
probably had a lot.
He'll put up a slide.
So
in our government affairs.
he lays the groundwork brilliantly. His report's great. It lays the groundwork to see this is the problem. Now let's get to the solution. How do we solve this? And so what can we do at the league? What can you do at the league, at the cities and towns and other things to incentivize developers to build these entitled units and have a more reasonable density requirements, so people can build a detached unit on their property, or an ADU or something like that, so it allows them to have kids to live next to them and stuff like that. And so that's the great thing about the Board of Realtors, is we have a good enough relationship with these cities that we can go to them and say, here's a solution. Let's start working on them. We've spent a lot of money in Salt Lake City, for example, through grants through the National Association of Realtors, in advocating, like, for example, Salt Lake City is considering a zone, they're on their housing zone, consolidating their housing zones from like 15, I don't know what it was, but into like 2. And this allows less cumbersome when you're actually trying to get a permit to pull permits for housing, less red tape.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a lot of things like that.
And speaking of red tape, if you really want to look into the cost of the final product of a house, red tape actually accounts for a significant amount of that final dollar. For single family housing, according to the most recent report from the National Association of Home Builders, it's approximately 24% of the cost of a home for a single family home is built in by government regulation.
Yeah.
Now, permits.
Right.
Now, granted, a lot of that regulation is needed. It's health, it's safety, it's fire, etc.
Yeah.
But there's quite a bit of it in there that red tape really drives it up. Now, what I find really striking is the multifamily cost of a percentage of the final cost of a multifamily home. What government regulation counts for there. If you had to guess, sorry, I like these guesses.
Yeah, you do.
These are fun. These are fun. I mean,
56%. Well, I don't know. It could be anywhere in between. Just tell me. Wait, is it higher or lower?
Higher.
No way.
Higher than 24%.
No way.
Of the cost of the final product for a home.
30%.
Higher.
No. What is it?
40%.
40%?
40% of the cost of a multifamily home is from government regulation. Now that's
like
parking standards.
That seems like an issue.
That's NIMBY policies, NIMBY advocacy as well. That, of course, health, safety, fire. We're all for that. But the additional regulation and the time requirement to build a multifamily home is much more high because of the additional hurdles that they have to go through at the city council level, the rezoning level, planning commission level, etc.
40%.
40%.
And let me tell you, to Matt's point, this is one of the things we working with cities. In fact, I met with the mayor of Harriman the other day about this, and we were talking about this. But one of the things we're trying to work on is like the 14-day review period to even get, approved per permit, right? So for example, there are a lot of times where you can submit plans for planning review, and it should be auto approved because it matches the zone.
What
and
has
everything.
already been approved?
Yeah, it's like it's a
You're not
permitted use.
reinventing
It's
the
not a
wheel.
conditional use.
Yeah.
It's a permitted use. It doesn't have to go before a planning commission because so it's like it's allowable. It would take literally I don't know, I'm going to say 2 seconds, but it would take like a day to approve, a day to approve. And I'm
Planning
like,
commissions are listening to this and going,
and
this
so
guy
for
doesn't
part,
even-
well, part of me is like, with the advent of AI, there's got to be resources, a way to auto approve things. If you submit plans, to auto approve it,
especially if it's cookie cutter, right?
Yeah,
We've done this.
not take 13 days.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand. People have financing out there.
Yeah.
And what will happen is what will happen a lot of times in development is they'll do a plan review for 13 to 14 days. The city will take up to 13 days, submit corrections. The developer will come back, submit and fix all those corrections, resubmit it. The city will take another 13, 14 days, and then they will redline something else. And so it's just like,
now you're at a month for a developer, and they're paying on that money.
And they're paying that money. So purposely just delaying the project.
Yeah.
And the cities don't understand, these guys have millions of dollars in financing.
Yeah.
That's just sitting there. And so they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest.
Yeah.
And so it adds to the 40%. And when they eventually go to sell when they go through phase 1, phase 2, and they entitle the land and they sell the properties, now it's like these houses could have been 20% less if they would have just been quicker.
Yeah.
Now it's 40% more.
Yeah.
And you add another 20% on top of that 20% to make 40%.
Yeah. So how do you do that with a city council? Well, first of all, I'm a huge advocate of going to your city council meetings, right? Whether you're just a resident, whether you're a developer, a realtor, whatever it happens to be, whatever happens in your city affects you.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And the ripple effect of that city on the other cities surrounding it, right? So like if you're not aware of what's happening, you need to be aware of what's happening.
Yeah, and something great that I love about our association is we have some really dedicated individuals who attend city council meetings, monitor the agendas. Now, my job at the board is to monitor those agendas, look at what's happening at each city council meeting every single week.
Yeah.
We have, close to 20 municipalities within Salt Lake County. Yeah. We look at every single city council agenda, what's happening during those times, and if something comes up, we have a really dedicated group who we can mobilize to talk to those city council members, talk to the mayors, the planning commission.
Get someone in the room.
Get people in the room. And oftentimes that's Marcus and myself who are going to talking to city council members, seeing if we can address this beforehand. But in the rare instance where there's an issue that we need help from our members, we do something called call for actions every now and again to reach out to our members saying, hey, this is a big issue that's affecting property rights for this neighborhood. Please write your city council member. Please attend the city council meeting. Voice your opposition or support to this type of project, and really emphasize. There was a project a couple years ago that we got involved with in Cottonwood Heights, actually, where we had to do a certain call for action through our membership. And thanks to that call for action, it was basically, just for some context, they were considering an ordinance that would require the riparian area zone to be enforced 200 feet from any stream bank, which you can't do certain things with your property, cut down a tree, do anything along those lines.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that 200 feet requirement was in not the person's property bordering a stream, but the person across the street. They wouldn't be able to cut down a tree in their own property because of this ordinance. Luckily, we were able to really mobilize our membership and get people out there to voice their opposition to that. And because of that opposition that we were able to help mobilize, they abandoned that portion of the ordinance, and it became good public policy. Yeah. Now, granted, we like to solve things before it gets to that point, and we have a very good track record of solving things before it gets to that point. But we sometimes send out these call for actions, and we really encourage our membership to look at those, to participate in them if it affects them especially. But even if it doesn't affect them directly, it's going to affect your customers, your consumers.
For sure.
It's going to affect our entire neighborhoods because
and there's a lot of people, homeowners, realtors, anybody that currently owns a home, it's an issue for you
Yeah.
because it's an issue for the other people trying to become homeowners,
Yeah.
right? And on the backside, there's so many people who also are saying, well, I already own a home. This isn't a problem. Your home value is affected also by what is happening in your city, right? So
Yeah.
everybody's so thrilled that, they bought their house for $40, $60, $120,000, and now it's worth 500, 600, whatever it happens to be,
Yeah.
and they're thrilled about it, but yet nobody can afford to get in it and they don't want to develop around, it's just, there are some issues. So I do think it is like, it is important, even if you are already a homeowner or if you're a realtor, that you are involved in helping
Yeah.
solve the problem, put the fire out when it's kindling, not when it's a huge,
Totally.
a huge flame, right?
So we've talked a lot about some of the problems and the hurdles that we're facing over the affordability crisis and how unaffordable housing is. I do want to take a little bit of time to mention some of the positives, some of the things that we have looking forward to us, because I hate doom and gloom stuff. I feel like I've put out too much gloom here, but there really are some awesome actions that the state has been taking, that municipalities have been taking to encourage some sort of solution to this affordable housing crisis. Now, something that I say every single day is there's no silver bullet to solving housing affordability.
Right.
No single bullet. I view it more as a shotgun approach. A shotgun, the casing could have lots of different pellets in it that might not make an impact by itself, but with all of them working together can make a huge impact. And I think a lot of it.
Quote that, this shotgun approach.
The shotgun approach to housing.
That's a good one.
Yeah. There we go.
That's a good one.
But I really do appreciate some municipalities who have been working, creating partnerships with developers to provide bought down affordable housing for their city employees, for first-time home buyers, for teachers, for firefighters, police officers, etc. Draper did a project recently. Same with South Jordan City did a project recently with, I forget the developer. Was it Ivory?
Yeah, Ivory.
It was Ivory Homes
Housing.
that created workforce affordable housing for individuals within that community, and they got the first right of refusal to purchase those homes. City employees at a much discounted rate that was helped subsidized by the city. That's one effort that a municipality is doing to help provide some affordability in their community. The state has been taking shots at creating some more affordability through this grant program that Marcus mentioned earlier for developers to build these type of housings, and also for consumers. There were these zero interest loans that they can get up to $20,000 if they're a first-time home buyer
on new construction.
On new construction homes under $450,000.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of debate whether it should be new construction and existing homes, or if it's just existing homes. The problem with it just being existing homes is that it doesn't help advance the supply problem that we have.
Right.
And by incentivizing individuals and developers to build these homes at that price point below $450,000, that's what we really need in that supply-demand equilibrium problem that we're facing today. So that's a great action from the state. Another great action that we really appreciate and the state really appreciates, some cities had some pushback with it, was requiring ADUs, internal accessory dwelling units, to be
requiring the allowing.
The allowable use, permissible use of internal ADUs throughout the state in every municipality. Now, we view that as imperative because ADUs provide a type of housing that is greatly needed for individuals who are just getting out of school, who are just married, to provide below market rate rents, while also allowing an individual, if they want to purchase a house, they have an income stream that will subsidize that mortgage. So it creates a more affordable unit at that point for that couple or individual buying that home. It also allows individuals to age in place too, because you might have someone who's lived in their home for 40 plus years. Their family has all moved out, and it might just be a couple or a single widow, and they love their home. They love having their grandkids over. They love having their family over, but it's getting a little hard to take care of that basement now, or it's getting a little hard to shovel, even shovel the snow or do the lawn work.
Yeah.
you can have that individual now rent out their basement to a family who is looking to start their own American dream journey. And maybe they might help out with the yard work. Maybe they might help out with the shoveling. Personally, for me, my first home when I got married to my wife at 24 years old, was in a ADU that I rented, a basement apartment that I rented with my wife.
Yeah.
It allowed for, I think it was $840 a month, including utilities.
That's awesome.
And if we tried to find a 2-bedroom place at that time, it would have been a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And because we were able to rent that basement apartment, we were able to save. And because we were able to save, we were able to buy our first home later on.
Yeah.
And so now my wife, my kids were in a great little home that we were able to buy because someone offered their basement apartment for rent.
Back in our day when they had wagons and.
I'm sorry.
Just joking.
Is he referring to back in our day,
back in my day?
95?
I think back in Marcus's day.
Back in my day, I was like, Matt paid $800 for.
Just so you know, audience listening, I'm only 42. How old?
So Matt paid $800-something. I remember going to college and only paying $500 for like an ADU basement when I was going to Brigham BYU, and so it's like, and that was 2000. Yeah, it was 2006.
Wow.
So
I was in 6th grade.
I
don't like to rub the salt in the wound, but every now and again.
Horse and carriage back in the day when I.
Here's the thing.
Before there were cars.
Here's the thing. I know that there's gonna be some punk kid later on who rubs the salt in my wounds one day, so I'm getting as much as I can.
That's right. He's smarter than us and younger than us.
Oh no, not even close.
42 too, so we're the same.
Air high five.
Air high five.
No, but back to what you were saying though about the ADUs.
Yeah, the state allowing ADUs throughout all municipalities. Now, granted,
and you used to not, right?
Every city made some regulations, and some of them were very restrictive with regard to internal ADUs.
Yeah,
and some of them wouldn't allow them altogether.
Yeah,
it was a very tough framework that each city had.
The benefit of buying though now, like let's throw this scenario out. You have a first-time home buyer who finds a single-family home. They are single or living with a significant other, or there's only 2 of them, whatever, or they, have 1 kid. They don't need a whole top and bottom of a house, but it has a basement apartment in it. So now they can qualify for the higher home purchase price
because they can use that rental income
can use that rental
in their
income
application
towards yes. And so here's their income. $171,000, right? Apparently. But now they can offset that for getting approved for that home because part of that mortgage is going to be paid for by the basement tenant, right, in that apartment. So it makes it so much more affordable for them to be able to do. And then as they need that space, they can use that space or they cannot, and they can forever rent it out, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it so much more flexible for a homeowner to figure out how they can make that work.
Absolutely. And the next frontier with that is going to be external accessory dwelling units. So that can be a garage, a detached garage that might have an apartment above it. One of those little tiny homes that you see that could be utilized in the backyard. Those things are just as important. And I think those things should be allowed so long as certain requirements are met. In the ordinance from the state, there still are requirements. You have to have a parking spot off the street parking. You need to have a lot that's at least 6,000 square feet. There's a number of requirements on there for internal accessory dwelling units, and I imagine that there should be some for detached accessory dwelling units as well. But so long as those parameters are met, I think that's a great housing option that helps allow for some additional supply in our market. The state has also pushed infrastructure districts and PIDs and other things that allow developers some tools to bond out for infrastructure and for needed items for housing development. The state's doing a lot of great work. I really applaud Governor Cox. I really applaud Steve Waldrop, who's the governor's housing strategy advisor, the legislature, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House. There really are some amazing folks out there who are advocating for the best interests of Utah homeowners and future Utah homeowners. And for
collaboration, right? Like I think that is bottom line what is needed. Collaboration from everybody, the state, the cities, the homeowners, current homeowners, and also the developers, like everybody has to work together
Yeah.
in order to get this through the finish line, right, of where we're wanting to go.
Yeah. And this is a battle that we're fighting now and will continue to fight over the next 10, 20, 30 years. This association exists so that we can have a strong collective voice in city councils, at the state legislature, at our national Congress, and at our national executive branches too.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's hard to see that at times, but thank you for doing podcasts like these, which allow us to convey that message of what we're doing to advance property rights, housing affordability, and attainability throughout our communities. Because I think it's a really important thing that our members are a part of that they might not see every day, but know that behind the scenes there's a lot going on to advocate.
Well,
for
and for consumers, right, to know that we are advocating for them, right? We tell people all the time that realtors are in their corner, right? And like we are advocating for home ownership, property rights. We are trying to have their best interests in mind, right? And so they need to know that behind the scenes, we are meeting with mayors and city councils and, at the state legislature.
And it's just like you said, it's not just benefiting the realtors.
Right.
Like we do stuff at the federal level all the time with mortgage interest deduction. People think like every year this issue, not every year, I don't know what it is, but the timeline on it, but these issues have to come up again where they have to be reapproved, the mortgage interest deduction or 1031 exchanges or anything of those things. That requires an advocacy group like the realtors and our government affairs people at NER to go to Congress and say, let me tell you the importance of reauthorizing this because it does need to be reauthorized. It's not in permanency. Yeah. And so we do a lot of stuff as realtors. I think most of the stuff we do it benefits our homeowners. Like, for example, one of the issues we're doing is, it's great to implement a plan, but if like, for example, there's a particular city I won't name, but it's like, if you want to do a permit for an internal ADU, it costs to pull the permit just as much as pulling a new permit for a new house, a brand new house. Yeah. And so those are the issues that me and Matt go to the cities and say, okay, how can we fix this? Because, that's a great policy. You're doing great. ADUs are great. We want them. That's awesome. But now it's like the implementation of them and actually getting them off the ground and getting people to actually do them. We can't make that process unaffordable too. Right. And so that doesn't benefit, that probably benefit, like I said, it doesn't, most of those changes that we're making doesn't benefit the realtor. It benefits just home ownership. And because we recognize there is generations of people growing up that are not owning anything. Yeah. They don't own, maybe they own a car or something like that, or, we're loans on car, but eventually they'll pay off a car, but they don't own like the previous generations have owned. We see that as a problem. So we go to city councils, to the state legislature federally to make sure that home ownership is possible for everybody at all income levels, so they can move up to that $600,000, $800,000 home.
Right, and upgrade. Yeah, no, and thank you. I think what you guys are doing is so important. Obviously, I work with you on a regular basis at the board, right? And I'm so grateful that you were able to come and share this information on the podcast because I think knowledge is power. You need to get that information directly from people who are advocating for people's rights to own, and also that know exactly what is going on at the city and the state level and nationally also, right? So thank you for being here. And I'm very grateful for all the work that you do. It makes my job easier. I don't know if easier, but it definitely makes me more competent in my job because you are going and doing the frontline work in getting all this information. And then I have the ability to pass it on to my clients, and other agents can pass it on to their clients, and we're aware of what's going on around us. So thank you for everything that you guys are
can
doing.
I do one shout out to our realtors? I'd like to thank you guys because it is not possible without Teri doing this podcast. It really, without RPAC and people investing in RPAC, it's just not possible. We just don't have we don't have the prowess that we have now. It's because realtors invest in their community, into their industry,
right?
By donating to RPAC, that we have the ability to even have conversations with our elected officials. And so ultimately, it's the realtor. The realtor is the one helping not only their industry, but they're the ones actually helping home ownership and the people and the clients they serve. So I give a huge shout out to our realtors, because they're the ones that really make the difference in the end.
And if there's one thing someone watching this podcast can do, the everyday realtor within our association can do to continue to make an impact in legislation, in ordinances and bills, and making sure the right people are in office, it's investing in RPAC. I think that is the one greatest thing that an individual realtor can do today to help ensure that these things continue to be moved forward, and that's investing in RPAC.
Yeah, for sure. It is the way to add rocket fuel to your voice of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because again, with that collaborative effort, we can get a lot farther down the road together. And yeah, I mean, I've been a major investor since my very first year being awesome in real estate, and I am a very big advocate and believer of that. And so thank you
for that.
Thank
you very much.
And thank you for being here. And
thanks
for listening. And call us, comment if you have any questions. We'd love to answer all of your questions. And let's get you home.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the X Factor Real Estate Podcast. Thanks so much for being here and listening. It's been a pleasure making this podcast for you. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Drop something in the chat. Let us know what you're interested in hearing about in the real estate world. I'm Teri Hudson, and I hope you join us for our next episode.